This is only the beginning. We got a lot more to go.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I'd like to call this Planning Commission study session to order. It's Thursday, the 28th of March, and the time is 6:08. Could I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Harris.
Here.
Commissioner Stephen.
Present.
Commissioner Sims.
Here.
Commissioner DeJournette.
Here.
Commissioner Baker.
Here.
Vice Chair Corsick.
Present.
Chair Barnes.
Here. This time, would Commissioner Harris lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That brings us to the public comment portion of the meeting. Any person wishing to speak on issues on the agenda only?
Not.
Not.
Sorry.
Is there a typo in there? Yeah, all right. Please remember that your time is limited to 3 minutes. We have one speaker, Mr. Brugueras.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioner, staff, and residents. I went to there was 2 meetings. I went to the second one, and I was able to watch some of the plans. And we're building a new community in the middle of the city between Alexandria and Cottonwood and Nason. What we need to make sure that we put the right businesses in that area that would attract people to come out. Now, there's a business that makes money from 10 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night, and that's In and Out. They attract a lot of people from 10 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. There's always people online here in Moreno Valley, packed every day, 7 days a week. Those are the kind of businesses that we need in that particular brand new committee, because it'll draw people to see what else is going on. Look at shops, spas, nails, feet, all those little things that attract people to come to the committee to look at it so it can function, so it can be on its own 2 feet. That's what we're hoping. I know they having the idea of building apartments. I'm hoping that they build condominiums because it's going to be closer to the hospitals, so we can be able to have nurses, doctors, technicians to be able to buy a piece of property, make it their home, and to be able to take care of themselves. So, I know if there's an upper class apartments, I know they'll take care of them because you'll have management downstairs. But we're looking for people to own properties. I know they're going to build houses around it, but I would like to see eventually condominiums to come into our city. We don't have enough of them. That's an idea. And my last thing is that we do build a parking structure. Make sure it's way in the back of the property so people be able to park there instead of using up the street completely up. So I know that Old Town, when you go into Old Town, they have, right next to City Hall, they have a parking structure. So when you don't find any parking around the city and it gets pretty crowded down there, they go to the parking structure and it's open to the public. That's what we're looking for, things like that, to get a lot of cars off the street and they can be able to walk around and enjoy their time. Hopefully it turns out well for us, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Brugueras. We will close the public comment portion of the meeting. Next up, Planning Commission business, an update of the Nation Street Corridor Phase 2 study.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Planning Commissioners. The intent of this study session was to provide you with an update and information on the Nason Street Corridor Phase 2 study that staff has been working on over the past months. And Associate Planner Claudia Manrique will present the PowerPoint, the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
evening. I'm Claudia Manrique, the Associate Planner. I've been working with our consultants on the Nason Corridor Phase 2 study. It's Ramey and Associates. This study continues previous work that we have been doing regarding the Nason Corridor. Phase 1 was completed in October of 2015. This corridor has been studied with 4 previous grants, all provided by SCAG. They include the Alessandro Corridor, Phase 1 and 2, the 60 Corridor Study, and Nason Corridor Phase 1, which was the vision plan, which went from the 60 freeway south to Iris. In March of 2017, we received the SCAG grant through their Sustainable Community Program for Phase 2. Phase 2 includes Sub-Area 2, which was defined in the vision plan. It's right here on the map, outlined in red. The hatched pattern property that's on Nason and Alessandro is property that is owned by the city. The area surrounding Sub-Area 2 is mostly vacant and flat. We have some single-family residential to the west and to the north, and there's several places of worship on the east and south of the site. The existing uses are provided here. Again, everything that's in the dark gray is currently vacant. This is what Nason and Alessandro looks like currently. These are some of the surrounding uses. Currently, we have the single-family residential. We have the Riverside Community Health Center. Have a daycare center that is next to the hospital, as well as some churches, the assisted living facility that's south of this project, and then up further north, closer to the freeway, is the Stone Ridge Shopping Center. Why this site was chosen is for a multitude of opportunities. The city owns a majority of the acreage, which is approximately 60 acres. It's adjacent to medical uses, the Riverside Community Hospital, as well as Kaiser. There's related offices for other medical uses in the assisted living, which provides a dynamic daytime population with demands for retail, entertainment, and services. We also have an increased demand for housing choices. We have a demand for strong development with pedestrian focus. We have requests for further civic, cultural, and community-wide events and areas which to hold these events. We're looking to expand the existing transit line. We like to develop friendly districts for bike riding and, again, for pedestrians. All these lead to our opportunity to create a place, create a new and exciting community, create public gathering spaces, all in just one area. Part of the nascent corridor phase 2, we've had 2 workshops. Community. The first one provided 3 interaction stations where participants were provided the opportunities to provide their visions for the study area, what they would like to see, what character and style development would they like to see in the area. Some of the takeaways from this workshop were the vision of a walkable, family-friendly environment which incorporates outdoor public spaces. Many of the participants used the example of Rancho Cucamonga's Victoria Gardens, also downtown Claremont and downtown Temecula. Many of the participants noted the importance of transit, pedestrian and bicycle access to the study area, especially with the neighboring schools to the north of the site. And many participants were just looking for something new and different that Moreno Valley doesn't have anywhere else in the city. Workshop number 2 was held in January of this year, and this provided the opportunity to review the 4 alternatives that were designed from what we heard from workshop number 1. The vision for the study area remained on point from what we heard in workshop number 1. With the growing concern with the open spaces that was proposed regarding who was going to maintain it and possible homelessness issues. There was also some issues brought up regarding parking due to the higher density residential that was proposed. And staff explained that any of the proposed residential projects that would come in this area are required to meet our parking standards. Key themes that we have in all 4 of the alternatives were a new retail town center, providing office space, new streets and connections, housing in different forms, community gathering space, park space, civic building, a transit center, and access to the medical center to the south. These were the 4 alternatives that were presented at workshop number 2. This slide shows some of the different housing types that we are looking for potentially to be in the study area. We have the single family, small lot, which is roughly 8 units per acre. The row houses, which is still a single family attached units with the density going up slightly to 18 units per acre. And a multiple family residential, which could possibly go up to a density closer to 40 units per acre. The concepts for the plan also include a residential mixed use, office mixed use, and some office space by itself. The goal in the design is also to provide streets for the people, meaning that we want these streets walkable and providing connections to all the uses that are desired. If you want to walk to the park, walk over to a cafe, walk to the transit center to take a bus to your work, or you have a job in the study area itself, in one of the office buildings, perhaps. And this slide just shows some of the proposed layouts for what these streets could look like. Having a slightly difference between the residential street, which we would have some on-street parking, some streets that would be reserved for pedestrian use only, streets with bike lanes, and then streets that would be exclusive for the shopping district. Of the four alternatives, two were chosen. The first place was alternative A, which we have here. It's the Main Street park blocks. In second place was alternative B, which is known as the Central Square. Both these alternatives provide all various uses that we have just previously discussed. Alternative A has the potential to approximately 2,201 residential units, 4.5 acres of public park space, and almost 750,000 square feet of office and retail space. Alternative B has a slightly higher residential units at 2,359. Public park space is 2 acres, and we have a similar office space area provided at 7,500. Both these alternatives we would be proposing in phases, with the beginning phases highlighted on both alternatives with the yellow boxes. We would begin with the residential neighborhoods first. Alternative A may also include a 3-acre neighborhood park in this phase. Alternative B could have 2 1-acre neighborhood parks. Middle phase would be expanding to include a civic building with the use undetermined at this time. But possibilities could include another community center, a performing arts center, library, or a combination of all these uses in one building itself. And the final phase would be the actual retail downtown part of the project. Some of the closer details of the Main Street park blocks is that highlighted in the bright green from Alessandro headed up north to Cottonwood to the big green park. We would have a Main Street that is lined with a park setting. There is 2 designs. This slide shows the park in the middle of the street. And further on, we have an option where the park space was moved to one side. Again, this shows the amount of use per type that we would expect we picked alternative A. Alternative B has the Central Park. When you go north of Alessandro, then you would have like the Central Park Square, then you would go further north and hit the bigger park as well. This one, the street parking in the retail section could have parking in the center. For a special event, when you close down the street, we would have built-in extra acreage to hold farmer markets and other community activities. Recap of the amount of uses per type that we could expect to see in alternative B. Next steps. When could we see possible development in this area? It's anticipated that private investment will largely drive the implementation of the proposed town center projects, and that external changes to the market would likely need to occur to provide and attract investors to the area. There's some factors in the horizon, such as the ongoing expansion of the University Health Center and possible future development of the Aquabella Master Plan community, which is located south of this project, that could provide some potential interest in developing our town center at Nason and Alessandro. There's opportunities for some future grants and other options to finance a Pacific Plan area for the area, providing our directions so we can cover all the facets of the development from the type, location, intensity of uses, and have a design guidelines for the whole area. As far as this document itself, the next steps is we're finalizing the document with our consultant team of Ramey and Associates, and we're tentatively scheduled to present the project to the City Council maybe in early May 2019. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions of staff, or is there any more to the report that you'd like to add?
No, that's it. If you had any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
What kind of housing will be down there? I know there's going to be over 2,000 something, but what are you looking at?
The housing proposed would be a mix. So we're looking at the smaller lots, subdivisions, which we have throughout the town now, which are developed as a plan unit development. We would also be including some newer types of housing, which would include the row house, which is they actually have shared walls. And of course, we're looking at even higher density multifamily than we have now at up to 40 units per acre, which we could be talking about apartment complexes that actually go to 3 to 4 stories high. So it'd be a healthy mix. And of course, we would want it designed to complement the neighboring traditional single-family residential.
I would add that I think we're looking at mixed uses as well, so perhaps residential over commercial. And also I would want to just reiterate, this is a very high-level study right now, so as the plan's refined, things like the exact housing types and the densities would still be subject to review and approval. It's just kind of the high-level ideas that the study contemplates right now. Thank you.
Go ahead.
How did the city acquire the 60 acres, or approximately 60 acres? How did that wind up being city property, or is that?
Originally, that site was intended to be the Civic Center, and it was later moved to the location that we're at now. As far as the history of how the land was transferred, I don't know, but it was intended to be for a Civic Center.
You know, when the March Joint Powers Authority, when they took over the redevelopment of the Marb lands around there, I used to work for the Water District. We worked very closely with the JPA when that was all back. That was like the early 2000s, and they came up. You know, they did all their planning and whatnot. And it seemed to me that they had done like the way that the JPA got that thing going. They did a development agreement with a master developer, and they kind of work cohesively. Is that kind of the path, or because it's something like this? A plan is really cool. You know, just the half hour we heard, you know, that's kind of neat. You know, but at the end of the day, for it to see it to come to fruition, to the plan, you almost have to have some muscle from the very get to stay on path.
Implementation and how to accomplish that implementation is one of the things yet to be worked out. But as you say, master developer could be one thing. There's a variety of different options we'll look at before we take it forward.
If I may, Chair, and members of the commission, just kind of interject a little bit. The purpose for the study session this evening is if anybody has any innovative ideas or any experience in this way, we would be looking for your input. And if there were lessons learned through that experience that you might have been exposed to, we'd want to hear that. But early on, when we started looking at this site, that idea was one of the ones that has been floated out. It'll be presented to the city council ultimately when we go there, asking them how do they want to implement it. There'll be various strategies, including things like selling off individual pieces of the development and seeing if the market would absorb it a little at a time, or hiring a master developer. Could be a lease agreement. It could be a number of things. But any ideas that you guys have, the purpose of this study session is to actually flesh those out if you have them.
Is any of the housing specific to, I know I've kind of beat this drum before, but you look at what's going on over in Banning with the Sun Lakes community, and there's one, I can't remember the one that's right next to it, but those are, I mean, you go in, there's like 3,500 homes in the Sun Lakes, and that is a resort. I mean, you go inside that place, it is really, really nice. My dad lives there, so I go over there and see it, and I'm waiting for the economy to dip. I think I'm going to go get me one. But anyhow, I get to the point where I'm ready. But something like that, I mean, they're very, it's pretty high density. They probably are getting, 8 to 10 houses an acre or something like that, but it's very, very well done. And it would just seem like that with all the medical and all that stuff out there, if you could create, it would just seem like there's a lot of nexus there with, if you could incorporate either in the Aquabella or in some of this kind of area where you have a senior type, or 55 older type setup, you create a lot of built-in business for the medical. You built in people need to go do shopping and things like that, and having that all kind of together, it seems like one of the housing parts of this plan would incorporate some of that, so you get some of that synergy from that.
I guess it depends on whether you want to cater to the patients or the care providers. Because part of the idea, I suppose, is to attract, young professionals, because you've got higher density housing, so all the medical uses, right? Yeah, both, yeah.
Can I say something on something else? Are you done with that?
Well, I had one more question. Just in general terms, the plan moves forward, it gets refined, solidified. How is it implemented into the city's development code? Does it just become a amendment to the general plan? Is it a specific plan that gets placed over the top? What's the general form of implementation?
One of the questions we will have for the city council. We would most likely be looking at to have a specific plan. That way we could delegate and have strict guidelines for street layouts, architectural, landscaping, all the components in one cohesive document.
Okay. City would fund that and put that in place, and then it would move forward accordingly?
So if I may interject a little bit, the property is currently zoned, the city-owned property is currently zoned public. So in order to accomplish any of the land ideas that are up there would require a general plan amendment and a change of zone. The city is ready to embark upon a comprehensive update of the general plan. We hope to get that going. One of the strategies or the idea was to consider it during that process. If for some reason the city council wants to take it on a separate path altogether, there's the option where it could be an individual general plan amendment and zone change just specific to that property. And as Associate Planner Manrique indicated, a specific plan could be an appropriate approach to a large area like that. The minimum acreage for a specific plan on our code today is 15 acres, so it's definitely large enough to have a specific plan on it. the benefits of a specific plan is it looks at the land use, it also looks at the infrastructure, it looks at the way you finance, and you put all those pieces together, and it hopefully will streamline the development in the future. So those are some of the ideas.
Seems like if you really want to implement or make sure the finished product conforms as closely as possible to the plan, that specific plan is the way to do that. Because if you just use general plan and zoning, there's a much wider range of development that could occur if it's just market driven. So, I mean, is that accurate?
A specific plan would lay out a particular vision for the area and specific development standards and other things for each area within it. So you're right, it would be much more specific to the development that would be coming into it.
And it wouldn't preclude the option of modifying the specific plan. You could do that at any point, as the market may have dictated or something. Any other questions?
I just, a question on the, it looked at one alternative had two half-acre parks, and the other one had a four and a half, something like that. Just out of curiosity, in my neighborhood, there's a little half-acre passive, it's a little, I think it's for the horses. You can go, they can drink water or something like that. Anyhow, I never see anybody in there, and I was wondering, is there much utilization? Are there? First question is there? Does the city have quite a few of these little half-acre little neighborhood parks?
I think the park areas that you see in the plan are largely weaving through commercial areas as well as residential. So they're not intended to be residential parks per se. There might have been some within the residential areas, but it's more as open space weaving through the plan. So you saw one was park blocks, which had kind of a linear look to it, and others with more of a focal point, large open space area that might be used for a multitude of different activities within I think primarily the commercial areas is where you're seeing them in that plan.
So these parks would be just more just go sit on a bench or read a book or
More like open space.
Relax, you know?
Relax, chill spot. Okay, I get you.
Chill
But,
spot.
well, because I always, there's always a need for parks, and parks are expensive. They grow grass and they have to be taken care of all the time. But they are nice. It's part of what makes a community is have sports areas and recreational things. So I like the 4.5 acre thing.
Anyone else?
I'd like to just say I like the idea of that performing arts center. One of the things that we really lack in this community is a place for our smaller groups to get together, and also in the Riverside area. I belong to a lot of groups. We're always looking for inexpensive performing places, and we struggle. We perform in churches, we perform in everything else. I think you have a revenue generating opportunity there if that can be designed to be affordable for smaller spaces like the box in Riverside, things like that. Not only would you pull from your Moreno Valley groups who struggle all the time, but also you would pull from the surrounding neighborhood, from some of the smaller dance and theater and other groups. And it also adds to a quality of life. We would not have to drive anywhere. We could just drive down those pretty green streets to a place, not have to leave our neighborhoods. But it's something we lack, a little bit of that identity here, and I would really hope to see that be a really strong part of the planning. And also to utilize people in the planning of that actually perform. Many times communities will give these to developers who don't understand lighting and the ease of use in green rooms and simple things like that. And we've gone to many facilities that are so poorly designed. And all they had to do is to ask just people that perform there, and you could avoid some of the pitfalls. But I really hope that will come to fruition.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes, I just looking at it, I thought some of them look like they would be a great place to have a street fair. Moreno Valley doesn't have anything like that, but I know some of the surrounding areas, like Redlands, that has a really nice street fair. People from surrounding areas actually go there for their street fair, and it might be nice to draw people from other areas into our area to spend their money.
You made an excellent point, and actually both plans that we have the opportunity for that. The street fair and alternative A, we would have the built-in parks, linear park space that could be used, and in alternative B, we can actually close down the street and have the open space in the center that is during the day or off times is parking. During the event, now we have a big carved out space to hold these street fairs. So definitely a good point.
I like the 4 acres, and I concur with my partner down there in the end. Moreno Valley has very little. I mean, there's no walking space, pedestrian spaces encompassed with retail space. I'd like to see maybe some type of plan there where we wouldn't even have to close down the street in order to have a lot of pedestrian walkway encompassed in this area. So I don't know if that could be included in the plans.
Anybody else?
I was gonna say, a lot of times, like in Old Town Orange, they have what they call the roundabout, and they've actually put on events there for many, many years. And they've able to have the pedestrians walk all the shops, and then you're able to have a car that if they do in the daytime, they're able to either exit on each end. So I think something like that would be very handy for that area.
Regarding that, both plans currently offer a large amount of parking that would be nearby and not impacting the street use and pedestrian mobility throughout the area. In the future, when parking requirements lessen due to people either Ubering, using Lyft, we would hope to have the transit center in this area that would also take off and lower the need for parking. And then in the future, the parking lot of phase 1 or 2, that could also be built out in the future to even more maximize the uses that are allowed in the study area.
I have another question. I realize this is early on in the process, and this is a 10,000-foot view. Originally, this was slated for Civic Center. Is the city looking to be a user participant in any of this space? Sometimes that can draw other users, so.
Let me answer that one. There is no intention to relocate City Hall to the east end of the city, but there were some considerations of public space being incorporated into some sort of a town center. That's still to be defined. Things like a performing arts center, if it was public or private, is something that could be explored, or other types of community benefiting facilities. A library, we continue to talk about possibilities to expand those sorts of services. What we have to look at when we talk about public spaces is how you can also maintain them over the long term, how they can be financed. So that will be something that the city council will have to have careful consideration of.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thoughts, closing remarks, observations? Well, it looks like a lot of time and effort has been put into it, and I mean, the plans obviously look very nice, and the question is, how do you initiate? What's the magnet? And hopefully the economy stays robust and get this off the ground. But it looks great at this point. A real noble effort. Yeah? All right. With that, we adjourn? All right, thank you very much, staff, we appreciate it. And at this point, we will adjourn and reconvene at 7 p.m. for the regularly scheduled meeting. Thank you.